What's up, guys? This is Riley and Dalton with True North Sports here, coming at you with a little bit of a rebrand. I know it's been a while since our last upload, but what better time to do it during this Timberwolves, conference finals run as of now. We're super excited. We're filming this the day before Game 1. It is Tuesday. If you see any flashing on my screens, because I'm watching the Pacers Celtics on my other monitor here. But we're gonna just preview this Wolves Mavs series. We're gonna plan on having weekly episodes, maybe a couple times a week during this playoff run. But let's just jump into this. So I'll let you start, D.
Yeah, I think the biggest point was Jamal Murray and Joker came to play in Game 7. I want to touch on Game 7 a little bit before we go to the
Yep.
Mavs. But outside of those two, what Michael Porter Jr. was 7, Aaron Gordon with 4. Like, that's not going to get it done. And a 20-point lead blown by the defending champs, dude. It's so sweet. I think if Jaden and Nas played last year, round 1, we got a whole different series going. But is there anything you want to touch on Game 7?
Yeah, I mean, the third quarter Wolves, they strike again. What was it, 1 or 2 seasons ago? It was a total inverse. They're just horrible in the third quarter. Finch would constantly be having to use early timeouts, and that's when opponents could make the run. But it is totally different this year. They just constantly come out and punch you in the mouth, and they did it again there to get back into it. Then Ant with that huge step back three to pull them within one right at the end of the third there. So shout out to the Wolves for going and getting it done in Denver. They win 3 games on the defending champs' home floor in Ball Arena. So we love that. But this series that we're about to preview here, we are so excited for. We're both big Luka and Kyrie guys. There's so much star power in this. Personally, I think it's going to be a bit of a rock fight. My biggest takeaway is it's going to be a defensive battle. Over the last 20 games of the regular season, the Mavs actually had the best defense in the NBA. And we know the Wolves are the best defensive team in the league. So this is going to be a bit of a rock fight. But when you got guys like Ant, Luka, and Kyrie, all these self-creating shot makers, it's going to make for a hell of a series. But the first, I'm going to start with a question here for you. This was one of the first things I ever wrote down. What do you think PJ Washington's numbers looked like against the Thunder in round 1? Points per game and rebounds.
Well, I will say I watched a lot of PJ Washington at Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
probably too much. And when they actually traded for him, I was kind of like, I don't think he's going to be able to spot up and hit corner threes consistently enough when you're around Kyrie and Luka to be a difference maker. But I'm going to go 14 and 7.
Pretty close. 17.7 and 8.3. He had a great series. 2 of those games were a little bit of an outliers when he hit 7 triples that one game. And then one more question about PJ. What do you think he was total in the series? I think he shot 49 threes. How many of those threes do you think he made?
Oh, see, this is literally what I was just talking about. So he took 49
Yep, I believe
in that
49
in that
threes.
6-game series. So
Six game
he was
series.
taking a lot
He was
of
putting them up.
threes, man. I mean, 24?
Almost on the nose. 23 threes. He shot
Oh
47%
my
from deep rounding up.
gosh.
So he was an absolute flamethrower. I will say a bit of that is because of the Thunder's defensive strategy was, hey, if Derrick Jones Jr. and PJ make threes against us, then they make threes against us. But they were wide open looks. Um, and OKC shot 30% on open threes against the Mavs. So that's going to come on Jaden and Nod to be knocking down those threes because if you're only shooting 30% on wide open looks, you're not going to get it done. That's a big reason that the Thunder couldn't overcome the Mavs. But yeah, PJ's kind of that X factor right now. He's speeding off Luka. Luka's a bit like Jokic, where he's going to find the open man pretty consistently. So you're going to have to rotate. Wolves did a pretty good job, I think, of rotating in the Denver series and contesting shooters. But you're really going to have to make sure you're doing that if PJ is going to continue to shoot like this. So I can't believe we're starting this segment with PJ Washington, but here we are. So shout out to PJ for having a great series. I've always kind of been a PJ guy. I think his first game in the league, he had 7 triples for the Hornets. So now that he's in a winning culture, you can really see how much of an impact he can have. But we'll start with the actual preview here now. I think they're going to match up. Mike's going to guard PJ. Now, I know that's a bigger body, but you're not going to probably stick him on Kyrie. Definitely not Luka. Ant already said in his post game after the Denver series that he's going to guard Kyrie. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. Jaden's obviously going to be on Luka. Going to have to keep your cool. and stay out of foul trouble. He's going to get whistles. He's a slow pace of play guy. So you just got to, kind of take those on the chin when you get called for one and not let it boil over. Cat's probably going to be on Derrick Jones Jr. would be my guess. And then Rudy is going to be on Gafford. I think they're still going to start Gafford, even though Lively's been playing out of his mind. They kind of been splitting those minutes between the two, especially towards the end of the series. But anything different that you think the Wolves are going to match up?
No, but Lively, 15 boards, man. He's had a nice rookie performance. And Daniel Gafford, another SEC guy. I watched probably too much of him. And he was another nice addition with PJ Washington that they got this offseason. And it's showcasing in the playoffs. I do think the Mavericks are the second best team in the West in the playoffs. I mean, you go and beat OKC. I mean, SGA was still doing his thing. I mean, Josh Giddey's probably going to be gone.
Yep.
More than likely.
I agree.
Which is probably a good thing for OKC at this point. But yeah, my biggest point is Jaden has to stay out of foul trouble.
Absolutely.
He has to. And I can already kind of see it to where he's going to pick up 3, and his third's going to be early in the second quarter, and then he's not going to be a part of the game. And then who's on Luka next? Probably Nah, which
Probably
is
Nah.
a great option to have. Don't get me wrong. But then, hey, once Ant maybe needs a breather, who's going on Kyrie? And then Kyrie will get 10 on you real quick. But I'm just excited that game 1's in Target Center. I think that's an underrated aspect. The fact that obviously being the 3 seed, being able to have home court from the jump. Hopefully KG's in the house next to Glenn Taylor. Charles Barkley just landed in Minneapolis, I saw. So yeah, I mean, it's just a good time to be a Wolves fan. But who do you think after Derrick Jones Jr. is going to guard Anthony Edwards in this series?
That's one of my biggest takeaways from this is even though the Mavs have been absolutely fantastic defensively, like I said, over the last 20 games of the regular season and in the postseason, I just don't think they have anybody who can even remotely stay in front of them. I will say, I think they'll try some Kyrie on him because Kyrie, he's been sitting down and guarding. I'll give Kyrie his credit. Dan Gilbert talked about this when he was in Cleveland. Kyrie can sit down and guard when he wants to, and he's been doing a great job of that. I know he hasn't had like the eye-popping points and all the stats, but what a fantastic series from him. He's been doing everything for the Mavs. And that goes both ways. Ant, this postseason, 38.9% opponent field goal percentage. That's the best mark in the playoffs. So guys are not scoring at will on Ant. He is absolutely locking people up. But to answer your question, I think might be Kyrie, but outside of that, I don't know. I really don't know what they do. They're going to probably take one out of Denver's playbook and just start blitzing Ant and say, hey, you're going to make the right play like you did against Denver, but we're just not going to get beat by you. We're going to make Jaden and make Nah and make these other role players show that they can beat us from the perimeter and in scoring in general. But I'm super excited for that. Ant should have his way with Derrick Jones Jr. No disrespect to him. But yeah, I'm super stoked for that matchup. Yeah, I just mentioned the Ant field goal percentage. So Ant's been fantastic. What do you think about his Game 7 performance? 6 for 24, going back to the Denver series. How do you think he's going to respond in Game 1?
Yeah, I mean, that's my favorite part about his game is obviously he's an offensive player. I think he's averaging 29 points per game in this year's playoffs. Last year in that series against Denver, he was over 31.
Yep.
And then in his second year, he was even putting up 25 against that Memphis in that 6-game series. So, I mean, 6 for 24 is rough.
25%.
Don't get me wrong, but he just showcased by shutting down Jamal Murray and actually making a difference. And then, hey, you knock down a couple threes,
Start
10-point
yourself
lead.
A little.
Yep. So, no, I mean, the Kobe comparison is whatever to the Game 7 against KG in Boston. 6 for 24. I mean, he had 15 boards that night, so it's a little different. But Ant defensively was unbelievable, and I think he is the best two-way player in the league at 22 years old. He doesn't turn 23 until August.
This entire postseason run, yeah, he'll be 22.
Yeah, and that's where it just the matchup is nice when you have Ant on Kyrie and then you have Jaden and Nah on Luka for most of the game, and then you can bring Naz Reid off the bench. Derek Lively's played great off the bench, but Naz has arguably played better
Yep.
all around. I mean, defensively, he was probably the best against Joker. I mean, Rudy was getting tossed around. I mean, Nas had some big plays, that kick out to Ant for that corner three. I mean, it's just going to be a great series. Wolves minus 180. What do you think about that
I thought it was
coming
a bit
out?
high. I do think I was listening to Bill Simmons and he brought that up too. I think they opened at minus 170 on FanDuel. It's been jumping. It depends on what website you look at, obviously, but all of them are kind of around that minus 170, minus 180. I agree with Bill Simmons. He said it was a bit high. You would have it more in the minus 140 or minus 150 range. But I do think they should be favored. They did win 3 out of the 4 games in the regular season. Now you do have to take that with a bit of a grain of salt because both Kyrie and Luka missed time and games against the Wolves in the regular season. And after that trade deadline, getting Gafford, getting PJ Washington, they're not the same team as well. And I don't think the Wolves played the Mavs post trade deadline. So bit of a different lineup that they're going to be facing. But the familiarity guarding Luka, guarding Kyrie, that'll be the same because that's obviously where the offensive hub starts. So you got to start with those guys. But yeah, anything else to add here before your official prediction?
Yeah, I mean, Jaden McDaniels, unbelievable. What a time to have your first back-to-back 20
No
pieces.
kidding.
You know,
Yeah.
what a freaking time, especially with Ant. I mean, 6 for 24 just normally isn't going to cut it unless you got some other guys hitting shots. And Mike Conley hit some crazy shots. Cat took over part of that game, kept him in it. Got to shout out Karl Anthony Towns. Rudy Gobert
Fade
hitting
away.
some big time shots. Some big time shots for Rudy Gobert. So yeah, everybody played great. Naz Reid including, and I think he is going to be the X factor. I think he's really going to dominate coming off the bench, and the Mavericks aren't going to be able to guard kind of a bigger guard like he is. I don't think he's even a post anymore. So who do you throw on him? We're
Right.
already talking about who you're going to throw on Anthony Edwards, who you're going to throw on Naz Reid, and I think he could have a couple 20 pieces in this series, right?
Yeah, I think he's gonna be playing more minutes than he did the Nugget series. The whole Rudy being played off the floor thing, that is such a tired narrative and a wrong narrative. He actually has the best plus
Yeah.
minus in the entire postseason. He's plus 111 through this entire postseason. But the Mavs are a little more five out, even with guys like Gafford and Derek Lively. They're not afraid to spread you out. That's a little more recipe for seeing more Nas Reed. They're going to still close with Rudy, obviously, but I do think Nas will see a tick in his minutes because of that five out offense that they're going to be facing. But yeah, I love how you said he's the X factor. And like you said, Jade McDaniels, back to back 20 pieces, first time in his career. Super efficient, too. He was 7 of 10 in game 7. And game 6, he was just as efficient. I can't remember what he was off the top of my head, but it was uber efficient again. So love those two showing out. And like you said, normally 6 of 24 isn't going to get it done from your best player in a game 7 or in a game at all in general. But that's what makes Timberwolves so scary, is that they can afford to have something like that happen. And like you said, shout out to Karl Anthony Towns because he was really a stabilizer, especially in that first half. He hit that big corner three that I think got it down to like 12 in the first half. Now I know Denver pushed it back up to 20 early in the third quarter, but it seemed like he was the stabilizing force that was really able to put a run together. I think he was 5 of 6 in the first half, and then he had a couple of those layups there during their run in the third and fourth quarter, and then Ant kind of closed it out there. But I'm gonna predict Wolves in 7. I think this series goes the distance again. I don't think it's going to be 4 wins at home, 3 losses on the road. I think it'll be a bit more mismatched. I think the Wolves are going to jump out early. The Mavs kind of have the tendency to take game 1 almost as like a learning curve or a, almost feel you out game, see what you're going to throw at them. They've been demolished in the first 2 games of the playoffs of each series, and that dates back to not, I guess last year they weren't in the playoffs, but the season before. It always seems like they come out sluggish and you're kind of wondering what's happening, and then they come back. So if you can take game 1 and then go and get game 2 as well, to be going 2-0 back to Dallas, that would be huge. So what do you think is your official prediction?
I know, and I was thinking about this a lot, and I think Jaden's going to be in foul trouble, which is going to be a problem. And I don't think they're going to hit enough outside shots. And like you said, I think they're going to blitz Anthony Edwards this whole entire series. And Cat might be able to go out and get you 23, but you're going to need more. And if Rudy's in foul trouble on top of it, Nas is going to have to play out of his mind.
Yep.
And I think he can for a couple games, but I actually do have the Mavs in 6. I think they're going to close it out back home. I think Luka, if he gets a ring, we could be talking about him possibly being the face of the league. Now, hopefully that's Anthony Edwards. I hope and pray, but age 22, it's just tough. You look
It
at
is
LeBron with his age 22 run. I mean, he was carrying that squad. Now, Ant has a little more help, but
a lot more help.
I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping I'm wrong, Rye. But I think Luka and then Kyrie's just been there, done that. It's nice that we have Game 7 experience now. I think
Yep.
that's going to be so huge. But yeah, I think Game 1 though, I got Wolves, baby. I got Wolves in Game 1. But I think it could go downhill after that, losing 4 out of the next 5.
And this isn't uncharted territory for Luka. He has made a conference finals run before. Now they didn't win it, but we've seen him. I think the home court thing, obviously it's big that the Wolves have the first 2 games in Minnesota, and if there's a Game 7, that's in Minnesota. But if there's one guy in the league that I think the home court doesn't affect him at all, it's Luka Doncic. We saw what he did to your boy Book in Game 7 2 years ago. He just doesn't care.
Rough.
He's just like Ant. They can go in to these enemy territories, and it just seems like they aren't rattled, they aren't phased, they almost embrace it and like it. So you got Mavs in 6, I got Wolves in 7. Obviously, we're hoping for the Wolves as I'm looking at Ant behind you there. But it should be a hell of a series. We're gonna keep these episodes going throughout the series. Maybe not after every game, but for sure be touching in. And as far as the rest of the content goes for this channel, it is going to be mostly Minnesota based, hence the name True North Sports. But we will touch on other things. But our main goal going forward is to have one longer episode a week, maybe like Sunday, kind of like Bill Simmons does, the Sunday pod, where we'll have those longer half-hour, 40-minute episodes where we touch on multiple sports, multiple different topics. But anything else to add before we call this a video?
Nope.
Let's go, baby. Wolves in 7.